Yo everyone, welcome to my predictions and breakdown of the entire UFC 320 Ankalaev vs Pereira 2 fight card. And I can't lie, I've been waiting for this one quite a lot, guys, and it's mostly because I'm a massive Jiri Prochazka fan and I'm hyped for pretty much any card that this guy fights on. I do want to start off by saying that I do apologize for how late this video is coming out. I've been feeling pretty rough this past week with migraines and I literally just couldn't get in front of the computer to write this script for this video or to watch much fight tape. So I do apologize for the timing of this video. It won't be a more in-depth video as you're probably usually used to either. I literally just had to try to rush this one out because I've been trying to get this video out a little bit faster as well, and I just haven't watched as much fight tape. I still watched a lot, but not as much as I normally do. But before we get into the predictions for this fight card, let's quickly recap the last UFC fight card and talk about our channel results as well for UFC Fight Night, Olberg vs Reyes. And I'll just be recapping the main event for the most part and then talking about my channel's betting guide results. If you guys would like to skip this at all, you can. I will just leave timestamps in the description and the comments below if you do want to just stick to the predictions for this current video for UFC 320. I don't mind, but if anyone wants to see my thoughts or results, I'm going to get into them right now. And I will say, as a Dominic Reyes fan, I am devastated, guys. But as someone who did pick Olberg to win this fight by KO as well, of course, I'm not insanely shocked at the outcome. It was a rougher stylistic matchup for Reyes, who does his best work countering off the back foot, in my opinion. And I know Reyes has had success moving forward in his career, but it's usually been against lower level competition or against fighters that don't have the best boxing ability, which is pretty funny to say since Jon Jones showcased this massively when he versed Reyes, because Reyes could just press him up against the cage, pepper him with shots on the front foot, because Jon's boxing is the weakest part of his game. But regardless of all this, super sad for Reyes, but I think Olberg is just really solid, and I would be keen to see a matchup between him and Jiri in the future, because in his fighter interview he did say, "I'm coming," which is everyone knows is a quote from Jiri, so I'm sure he wants that fight. I do think that fight would be a banger fight as well. I would worry for Jiri, guys. I would be super worried. You guys will see how big of a Jiri fan I am towards his fight prediction in this video. But in terms of the rest of the card, though, I thought it performed quite well. The card was great to watch overall. In regards to my results on the card, though, for whoever is curious, I went 11-1 on the card, one off a clean sweep, with the only fight that I picked incorrectly being Jake Matthews versus Neil Magny. I've never actually clean sweeped a card before, guys. I think I've been off maybe three, maybe four times doing these videos, but I still am very happy with the result. I will look forward to maybe clean sweeping a card in the future. In terms of my betting guide results, I'll put them up on screen for you guys now. We did quite well on bets this week, made close to around 2 units, I believe it was, on this card, with a few bets cashing that I placed on stream live as well, which was very sick. I do want to give credit because the Cameron Ralston by KO bet that I added on stream was given to me by a subscriber named Triple T in the chat, so I just wanted to give props to him there. Overall, guys, I'm very happy and I'm looking forward to this next card. We didn't actually have a subscribers bet of the week last week, so it was cool to see people in the live stream just talk about what bets they had on each fight, so I appreciate people jumping in and talking to me. And by the way, I will be posting the full card betting guide for this card later on this week when the bet lines are fully out, so you guys can see all the bets I'm thinking about for this card. And if you want to be a part of the betting guide by becoming the subscribers bet of the week, please go into the comment section below and let me know what your favorite bets are for this card, and I will be taking one person's bet to add to the betting guide for this week, guys, like I said. Anyways, let's finally jump into the video. I'll be starting with the prelims and working my way all the way to the main event. Timestamps are in the description and the comment section below if you guys would like to skip to any fight in particular. We're going to be starting with the first fight of the card, which is Veronica Hardy versus Brogan Walker. And listen, I'm gonna make this one very, very simple for you guys. And I'm sure many people are thinking the same thing about this fight. Veronica Hardy is pretty decent, and Brogan Walker is not really that good in my opinion. And if you're thinking that too, I feel like you would be right with that initial assumption, and you don't really have to do much digging further than that, in my opinion. But knowing me, I know I have to fucking watch so much fight tape, and I have to look through all the records, and I basically just do research until I'm comfortable and satisfied with the pick that I'm making, and I'll explain more on why Veronica Hardy should be your pick in this fight. I think Veronica Hardy has looked quite solid on the feet in pretty much all of her fights, and this is whilst she is insanely undersized against pretty much every single one of her opponents, by the way, guys. I know she lost to Eduarda Moura, and she was losing exchanges on the feet while getting out-grappled, but Eduarda Moura is really quite good, in my opinion, and I do rate her quite highly. And prior to that, she was on a 3-fight win streak against decent competition in Juliana Miller, Jamie Lynn Horth, and JJ Aldrich. When I compare that to Brogan Walker, who literally has like 0 wins against any good competition besides maybe a win over Miranda Maverick like 7-8 years ago, which is pretty insane, by the way, I'm not going to lie. Brogan is 36 years of age, fighting after being inactive for 2.5 years now, and coming off of 2 very one-sided defeats, outdone on the feet in one, and then outdone in the grappling in the other. From every standpoint here, this just doesn't look good for Brogan Walker, guys. Veronica Hardy is younger, she's faster, she's more technical, she's better almost everywhere this fight can go, and I think she should easily win this one, in my opinion. I don't see Brogan Walker being able to outmuscle or take down Veronica Hardy to work any grappling in this fight, and I think if she even tries, I see her getting reversed with Hardy on top, landing ground and pound in their fight together, just like Hardy did when she fought Juliana Miller and dominated her. And Brogan Walker actually lost to Juliana Miller very dominantly, guys, by finish, just to add that on for you all. Veronica Hardy is the pick. Confident Picks List edition as well. Moving on to Ramiz Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. And this one's actually a bit interesting because Ramiz Brahimaj has won his last 2 fights, both by finish as well. And I do think he was actually the underdog in both of them, if I'm remembering correctly now. He for sure was the underdog against Billy Ray Goff. And I know that 100% he was. He was like, I'm pretty sure he was like the biggest underdog on that card, and he got the sub in the first round. And now with him being the underdog again by a decent amount, I know that a lot of people are going to see that as a strong value, like pretty solid value. And don't get me wrong, it is for sure, guys, but Ramiz has struggled a lot in the past with a specific style of fighter, and that fighter is a wrestler, guys. And he's struggled against guys that have their own offensive wrestling and grappling threat quite a lot throughout his career. He's fantastic with his own grappling and BJJ when he is the aggressor, but when he's on the back foot, back against the cage, having to defend it against takedowns, he has struggled quite a lot. I will say though that both guys are relatively sloppy on the feet, and Austin Vanderford, although he's going to have the wrestling advantage, he really is only a wrestler. So I do think this is quite even on the feet. I have a feeling that the striking is probably going to be an afterthought though, and I do think there's going to be a ton of grappling here. Austin Vanderford is the better wrestler in this matchup, like I said, as far as what I've seen from fight tape, and I think he's going to control the fight a good amount of the time by managing to drag Ramiz Brahimaj to the ground, control him, and land some solid ground and pound. Ramiz Brahimaj's defensive BJJ is not the same as his offensive BJJ, meaning that even though he can attack off his back in this fight, I think he's nowhere near as good off his back as he is when he's on top position. And something that I'll mention about Austin Vanderford is that he's quite defensively responsible on the ground. He's never been submitted in his pro career, so I do feel very confident that Austin Vanderford dominates on the ground while staying safe of any sort of submission attempts coming his way. My official prediction for this fight is Austin Vanderford by decision win, or maybe even ground and pound TKO. Moving on to Punahele Soriano versus Nikolay Veretennikov, and this one has been a tough one to decide on because on one hand, I can see Nikolay Veretennikov as a decent sized underdog, and I just think he's probably the more technical and volume-heavy striker as the fight goes on. I know Punahele is super difficult to deal with early on, and he's his most dangerous on the feet in that first round, but he does slow down sometimes in the striking, and I do think I could see Nikolay Veretennikov potentially taking over in the second and third rounds of this fight. But on the other hand, Punahele has just looked so good recently since he's moved down to welterweight, and he always has had some really nice and solid wrestling in his back pocket if he needs it, and if he was to use it in this fight, I think it would be the big deciding factor towards who wins it. I think ultimately, after some back and forth, I do think I'm slightly leaning towards Punahele Soriano to get it done. I think he's quite fast on the feet, and although I do think he isn't as great as Veretennikov in the striking, he's not levels below him, and I think he could continuously fake the takedowns and apply some pressure by walking down his opponent. I could see him having a lot more success on the feet that way. I could also see at least one round of this fight going towards Punahele if he lands a takedown, so that's been a big thought that I've had throughout this fighter pick. It's because I know Nikolay Veretennikov can be taken down and can be controlled on the ground for extended periods of time throughout his career. And after watching the Miguel Baeza fight, Puna can keep up a solid wrestling pace for 3 rounds at welterweight, which is something that is very important to confirm for me. Punahele Soriano, guys, is the pick. I'm going to say he wins this one by decision with his wrestling. This is a pretty close one, though, because pure striking-wise, I do think that Nikolay Veretennikov could outdo him here. Anyways, let's move on to Patchy Mix versus Jakub Wiklacz, and I'm sure so many people are hesitant or frustrated at the thought of picking Patchy Mix after his debut against Mario Batista, and I do understand this, guys. He really didn't do much at all in that fight, but I actually was a person that wasn't surprised since I did pick Mario Batista to win that fight, and I said it was because Patchy Mix really just doesn't have much in the way of striking on the feet, and he really doesn't move his head, in my opinion, and I just thought Mario Batista was a way better striker. But I will say this is a way better matchup for Patchy Mix. Jakub Wiklacz is not going to skirt around on the outside and pepper him with combinations the whole time. He's a very similar fighter to Patchy Mix. He's decently heavy on his feet, a little ploddy at times, has pretty solid pace, which is probably the biggest worry I have for Patchy in this fight, and the fact that he doesn't mind moving forward and pressuring his opponents. Jakub's hands are pretty decent as well, but he is a grappler first. He's got solid wrestling and can lock up many different submissions if you give him the chance. I also just watched at least 3 fights of his recently, just of him versing the same dude, I think, in the KSW. And a side note, he's versed that dude 5 times, guys. I'm pretty sure he's versed that guy 5 times as far as what I can see on the record. And I've never seen someone verse someone more than 4 times at least. So these guys must have had a massive rivalry, because I believe 3 of the fights that I watched were pretty close as well, besides one submission one that was most recent. But like I said earlier, guys, this is a better matchup for Patchy Mix. Someone who is going to pressure forward against him, someone who can initiate the grappling and clinching with him, and someone who is arguably the worst striker in this matchup against Patchy. And who is less dangerous as well on the feet against him too. I feel like this is going to be a good bounce back fight for him. Patchy Mix should be the better overall grappler in this fight and the better overall fighter too. And I believe he's going to have a solid performance here and build back some confidence that he lost off his last fight. I'm going to go with Patchy Mix by submission win, maybe inside the first 2 rounds. That's going to be my official prediction for this fight. I was actually super close to putting him in my confident picks list as well, but I've just lost a little bit of confidence in myself after that Mario Batista performance. It was just so bad, but I do feel quite confident in this pick. Moving on to Macy Chiasson versus Yana Santos, and this one actually is a tough one for me because I'm pretty sure I've picked Yana Santos in her past 2 wins recently, and I think she might have been an underdog in both of them, but I'm not so sure. So I know she can grind out that win, and I have picked her a few times against a few people. I have no idea why she was an underdog against Miesha Tate, who was out for like 2.5 years, but I just feel like this fight in particular is going to be a pretty close one. Should be close to even, in my opinion, in odds as well. But Yana Santos, she moves around a lot. She can be quite tricky for someone who's trying to close the distance all the time, and this was showcased in her fight against Miesha Tate just recently. And I feel like Macy Chiasson is going to have to close the distance in this one to win, either by getting into the clinch or getting that takedown. So that's why this pick has been a little up in the air for me. But overall, I do think I'm going to slightly lean towards Macy Chiasson to win this one, and that's because of a couple of things that I'll talk about now. And it mostly revolves around what I've already talked about in a way, because we know that Macy Chiasson is going to be looking for takedowns in this fight. We know she's going to want to get in close and fight in the clinch, and I just think although Yana might be the better mover and the better fighter on the outside, she's going to be going up against a height and reach disadvantage here, and if Macy Chiasson works her way into the clinch at any points in this fight, I think she's going to absolutely destroy Yana Santos in the clinch, technically and overall. I think Yana Santos' clinch game is terrible, and I think Macy Chiasson knows how to win those exchanges. She gets a ton of damage off in the clinch. We saw her in her fight against Mayra Bueno Silva, and she does a ton of damage. Nice elbows, nice hooks in close. I think the clinch combined with the takedown attempts and potential control time is going to create a solid path of victory for Macy Chiasson here. My official prediction is actually Macy Chiasson by decision win 30-27 or maybe 29-28. I do think Yana Santos is good enough to win a round, and even to win the fight overall, of course. I did say this was a close one, but I am favoring the clinch work and grappling threat of Chasson here more than Yana Santos's like stick and move type game plan. Moving on to Daniel Santos versus Joosang Yu, and we've pretty much got the Korean Conor McGregor versus Daniel Santos, and I know his nickname is Zombie Jr. if I'm not mistaken. His style is just so similar to Conor's. I feel like that comparison is a little bit better. But let me tell you something, guys. This fight is going to be 100% one of those 50-50 fights in my opinion. I'm not going to be surprised to see either guy win here. But honestly, I do see the majority of people picking Joosang Yu on Tapology, even though he is an underdog, which is pretty crazy. But I do actually kind of agree with the majority here, and I do think I will take the underdog here in Joosang Yu, even though I do think Daniel Santos is a big step up in competition for Joosang Yu, and I do also think that there is a world where Santos just controls Yu on the ground and maybe even gets a submission victory after securing a takedown. But overall, Joosang Yu, in the fights that I've seen of him, regardless if he gets a finish or not, is usually able to find that absolutely devastating shot on his opponent. One dude I watched him verse literally ate KO blow after KO blow after KO blow. I have no idea how he did it. It really did show me that Yu is exceptional at finding that shot on people, and Daniel Santos, as good as he is, and as solid as he is with his pace and pressure, tends to not only get hit a lot in his fights, but get rocked and get dropped multiple times in them as well. It happened in his most recent fight against Jung Young Lee, and I'm pretty sure I remember him getting almost finished by John Castaneda when I was rewatching that fight recently. That's just something that stands out to me about Santos. He takes a lot of damage and he gets rocked a lot in his fights, and Joosang Yu's defense, although it isn't great either, the dude has shown that he has a granite chin and he can absorb a lot of massive shots throughout his career. I've seen him eat them. I do think his durability is going to be better than Santos's. But in the end, the main reason I wanted to pick Joosang Yu to win this fight is because I think he just finds that shot on Daniel Santos here and puts him away. I do think it's going to be specifically, if you want me to guess, I think it's going to be the high kick, in my opinion, that stumbles Santos in this fight. He got rocked by it against Castaneda, and Joosang Yu has an amazing rear high kick, in my opinion. I can see him landing that maybe in the first round of this fight when they're starting to trade back and forth. So my official prediction for this fight is Joosang Yu by first round KO, but like I said, this fight is still relatively close, and I'm leaning towards Yu because I feel like I can see him landing that kill shot in this fight with Santos because of Santos's track record of getting rocked and dropped in a lot of his fights. It doesn't mean that I think that Joosang Yu is a super confident pick, because Santos could just pressure heavy potentially in this fight and secure a lot of takedowns to win here, but I do think I'm siding with Joosang Yu in this fight. I do think it's close though. Moving on to Chris Gutierrez versus Farid Basharat. And I'll tell you this, guys, my initial thought when I saw Chris Gutierrez as a massive underdog was like, how the fuck is that the case? Because Chris is pretty good in my mind, but then I realized it was against Farid Basharat, and I was like, okay, we're going to need to do some research on this one for sure. I had watched a bit of Farid, but I probably had seen more of his brother fight, which is Javid Basharat, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen more of his fights. So after watching more of Farid Basharat's fights, I can say that I do agree with him being a favorite in this one, and I am going to pick Farid Basharat to beat Chris Gutierrez. I think for Chris to win this fight, he's going to need to keep distance as much as possible and chop the legs of Farid Basharat here, and he's going to have to do it a ton, in my opinion. But Farid is probably on par with Chris in the striking, if not slightly better than him. And the fact that his grappling is really good sort of just seals the deal for me on him as a pick here, because Chris can be controlled and can be out-grappled in his fights a bunch. He was getting taken down and controlled by John Castaneda, and he barely won that fight by split decision, if I remember correctly. And having someone like Farid, who controlled and beat Damon Blackshear in the vast majority of grappling exchanges when they fought against each other, I think his grappling is more than good enough to do the same and dominate Chris Gutierrez here. I'm going to go with Farid Basharat by decision win, or potentially by submission. That's my official pick for this fight, and I'm actually going to put it in my confident picks list as well as an addition. I do feel quite good about it. Moving on to Edmen Shahbazyan versus Andre Muniz. And this is back-to-back fights against Andres for Edmen Shahbazyan here. Just beaten Andre Petroski, and now he's versing Andre Muniz. And honestly, I think he does the exact same thing here, if not even better, by getting a KO early in this fight. I think Edmen Shahbazyan, even though he's lost a bunch of fights recently, has only really lost against some high-level competition, plus add on Gerald Meerschaert on top of that. But even then, he looks good and is difficult to handle in those fights. I remember him looking very good early on against Anthony Hernandez in his fight with him, before Anthony Hernandez, did his thing and took over later as the fight goes on. But in that first round, he looked good grappling Anthony Hernandez, and his striking was fantastic. In his loss against Gerald Meerschaert as well, he clearly should have gotten the finish in that one there. Pretty much threw the fight away going in a little too hard there. Had Gerald Meerschaert dead to rights in that fight. So guys, add on top, looking good in his losses. The fact that his wins have been very dominant. I think the dude is looking really good right now at a relatively young age. He's only 27 years old. I do think it's his time to make a run for it. And I do think Andre Muniz, his time is pretty much done in my opinion. He's nowhere near the level of Edmen on the feet. And his only way to win this fight would be to absolutely destroy Edmen in the grappling. And I don't think I see him getting the takedown unless this fight maybe gets to the third round with Edmen getting more and more tired. My official prediction for this fight is Edmen Shahbazyan by KO inside the first 2 rounds, but most likely the first round is where he does get it done. I don't think this fight is going to go that far. It's not going to go the distance in my opinion. I can see Edmen landing big shots maybe inside that first round, like I said, putting Andre Muniz away. I'm going to add this one to my confident picks list as an addition as well. Moving on to Ateba Gautier versus Trestin Vines. And I do know that Ateba Gautier was meant to fight Ozzy Diaz, but Ozzy Diaz did pull out of that fight just a couple of days ago. So now we have a brand new matchup for Ateba Gautier in Trestin Vines. And I do want to tell you guys who I was going to pick on that original matchup, just for whoever was curious. I was going to pick Ateba Gautier by KO inside the first 2 rounds, or inside that first round, and he would have been a confident picks list addition as well. But after watching fight tape on Trestin Vines, you might as well keep Ateba Gautier in the confident picks list still, because this guy has less of a chance than Ozzy Diaz, in my opinion, to beat Ateba Gautier. And Ozzy Diaz pretty much had as close to 0 chance as you could get. And this is just me being realistic, guys. Vines is taking this fight on a week's notice. He's never versed anyone close to the level of Ateba Gautier. And the guy has lost 5 times in his career, 3 times in his pro career, and 2 times in his amateur career. And I believe all of them have been finished losses. All 3 of his pro career losses were also by brutal KO in the first round, by the way. So what do you think Ateba Gautier is going to do to this guy, guys? Please, Ateba Gautier by first round KO is my pick for this fight. I'd be surprised if it got out of the first round. And after this, they need to start giving Ateba Gautier some actual decent level competition, because this is a step down from Robert Valentin in my mind. So please give him better competition. Moving on to the main card now, Abus Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer. And you know what, guys? I'm pretty sure I haven't taken too many underdogs on this card this time around, and I really just want to start picking underdogs, at least a couple on this card. And something I want to mention is that this is one of those fights that I do think you could pick Abus Magomedov as an underdog to win, but the only issue is that I do think Joe Pyfer is going to be the quicker and better boxer in this fight, and I do think that's where Abus is the weakest in my opinion. He's a super rangy dude. I'm pretty sure he's going to have the reach advantage in this fight. He's also a very powerful striker that can put you away, but against solid boxers, I believe that is where he struggles the most, and I'm pretty sure he was getting outpaced and outdone by Sean Strickland in their fight together, and overall, the dude just can't keep up that high of a pace throughout the second and third rounds of his fights, in my opinion. I think Joe Pyfer also might have a similar issue with pace because of how hard this dude throws his strikes, but overall, I do think he's more defensively sound from start to finish over 3 rounds than Abus, and I think that's where it's going to make the biggest difference in this fight with who gets the better of who in the majority of exchanges. I think there's going to be a bit of a feeling out process maybe in that first round. There's going to be a bit of back and forth, but I think by the time we get towards the end of the first and into the second round, Pyfer's cleaner combinations and his overall cleaner technique is going to shine through for him, potentially in the way of a KO as well. I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer to get it done here. I think he gets it done by KO in the second or third round of this fight. If not, I think he wins a decision against a Bus, potentially losing the third if he has solid pressure and pace in the first and second round and maybe tires himself out a little bit. I could even potentially see Joe mixing in that wrestling in this fight, since his team probably knows how dangerous a Bus is early on and probably would want to take some steam out of him if they can. That's my pick for this fight, guys. Moving on to Josh Emmett versus Youssef Zalal, and this is going to be a very quick pick here because I feel like this fight is relatively easy to break down. I will be picking Youssef Zalal as a confident pick to defeat Josh Emmett, and Youssef is just way too good defensively and in the striking overall just to lose to Josh Emmett, in my opinion. I'm probably more confident in him than a lot of guys on this card. I'm actually surprised he isn't the bigger favorite going into this one, because the dude literally was making Ilia Topuria struggle to land anything impactful on him when Ilia was making his debut in the UFC. Zalal is really good, guys. His movement and his striking, in my opinion, is just going to be too much for Emmett here. Emmett is too basic with how he throws his combinations and punches in a good amount of his wins and losses he's had, and the dude gets outdone on the feet before landing maybe a couple of big shots that either flatline his opponent or they don't, and then he loses the fight. And something I want to add is that he probably should have lost that fight against Calvin Kattar too, if I'm being real here. Youssef Zalal is the pick. 30-27 decision is the most likely outcome. I'm sure Youssef Zalal will want to play it safe here from the power of Josh Emmett as much as he can. So I do see him sticking and moving a lot in this fight. But honestly, it wouldn't even surprise me to see him get like a late rounds TKO or submission over Josh Emmett after rocking him with well-timed shots from the outside. That's my pick, guys. Moving on to the feature fight of the card, and the fight that I want to watch the most out of any fight on this card. We've got Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. And let me get one thing straight for you guys. I'm not the type of guy to pick against Jiri Prochazka, and in general, I would say I pretty much never do it, and that day does not start today. I've said it many times in my live streams when people ask me, but Jiri is pretty much, he's close to my favorite fighter in the UFC of all time. I think he's just behind maybe Max Holloway for me, and this motherfucker needs to be killed to be stopped, guys. And I don't know if Khalil Roundtree is that guy to do it. Jiri has taken and eaten some of the biggest shots I've ever seen from his opponents and of anyone he's versed, and that's always a massive worry I do have for him when he does fight. But Alex Pereira was the only one who was able to put Jiri away, and we all know that Alex is probably the most technical and powerful striker that Jiri has ever versed. Like, out of all of his opponents, Pereira is the most technical and the most powerful. In this fight, I see Jiri maybe starting off rough, getting his leg kicked, maybe taking a couple of harder shots in some exchanges, potentially even dropping the first round against Khalil Roundtree, but by the time the second round starts, Khalil will already be feeling the pressure in my mind, because Jiri just does not stop, guys. The guy literally will not stop no matter what. So for me, if you're betting on this fight to end by KO or under 2.5 rounds seems like the best bet for me here. But ultimately, when we're talking about picks, I am picking Jiri Prochazka to defeat Khalil Roundtree Jr. by KO in the second or third round of this fight. I don't think he will have a chance to have as much distance or range as he did against Jamal Hill in his last fight. I'm talking about Khalil Roundtree Jr., that is. And I think that Jiri, for better or for worse, of course, always seems to draw people into firefights in his fights with them, and I expect him to eat some solid shots in this fight, but I do think he comes out on top with his hand raised here. And another thing I want to mention is that not many people talk about this in regards to Jiri, but the dude has super long arms, and overall his reach is just insane. That's really another aspect to what gives so many people troubles with Jiri on the feet, because not only is he striking from unorthodox angles, he also hits you from further away than you probably realize. Jiri Prochazka by KO, if he does lose this fight, expect me to be crying big time, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Moving on to the co-main event of the card, Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey Sandhagen. And guys, there has been a part of me that really wanted to go with Corey here because of some weird reason, honestly. I'm feeling a very close fight happening here. I keep picturing some sort of split decision. I don't know why. This isn't based in anything at all. This is just a feeling I have. But when I think about this fight logically, I just know I can't go against Merab here, really. The guy is just the most relentless and pace-pushing fighter we've ever seen in the octagon that just doesn't slow down at all. I honestly don't know how he does it and how he managed to do it in almost every single fight that he's been in recent memory. I'm sure that pace is going to be set pretty high in this fight too. I do, of course, think that early on, Corey might do better than what people expect. I think he's got some really solid takedown defense, and of course, his striking and range control will most likely cause issues for Merab in the opening rounds. But after we get into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, it's hard to not see Merab taking over and being able to do what he wants with Corey at that point. Corey's style needs some sort of distance to work on the feet, and overall, when he has that distance, his cardio is great and he looks fantastic, but I just don't see Merab giving him that distance willingly at all in this fight. And for Corey to keep that distance, he's going to need to be faster and more agile than he normally is early on, and that will start to tire him out quicker and faster than a lot of his previous fights. I expect Merab to get a lot of takedowns stuffed in this fight, especially early, but I expect them to start landing at a higher frequency as the fight goes on and as Corey gets more and more tired. I think Merab is super physical. He will be the stronger fighter in this matchup. I just see, like I've said many times already in this breakdown, Corey getting tired as the fight goes on. He's going to get tired faster than his previous fights too, just due to his opponent and the fact that he wants to consistently keep range from Merab. He's going to need to switch up a gear in terms of speed and agility here, so he's just going to get tired a lot faster. I do, however, think that Merab has shown in his past fights he can be hurt on the chin and wobbled. It's happened quite a few times in his previous fights, like in his fights with Moraes and his fight with Cejudo as well. Merab has also shown that he can be hurt to the body, like in his fight against Sean O'Malley, so he is not invincible, guys. He can lose, but you need to have a solid game plan and target those weaknesses to have any chance of beating him, and I'm not sure if Corey will be able to beat Merab come fight night. It could happen, but I'm siding with Merab this time around. Merab Dvalishvili is the pick. I'm going to say he wins by decision, 49-46, or even potentially finding a submission in the late rounds against a severely exhausted Corey Sandhagen. I feel pretty good about this pick, but I'm not sure I'll chuck it into the confident picks list just because it's more of that weird feeling that I do have. It's me being a bit of a scaredy cat, I'm not going to lie. Moving on to the main event of the evening though, Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira 2. And I do want to start off by saying this. I watched the first fight live, of course, guys, and I've rewatched it recently to refresh my memory for this breakdown, and it was actually quite a bit different than how I remembered it. I remember scoring the fight live. I scored it to Ankalaev, of course, live. It was probably like a 3-2 or a 4-1 scoring to Ankalaev, in my opinion, but that was how I scored it when I watched the fight live, guys. When I watched it back, each round carefully as well, is it crazy to say that I think Pereira could have been given this fight 3-2? I think, like, the first round was his, in my opinion. Then the second round was just clear Ankalaev. It was the clearest round of probably the whole fight to me. Round 3 was close, but I edged it to Pereira watching it again. Round 4 was clear Ankalaev for me, and then round 5 was really close, and Pereira landed a lot of the better strikes of the round, besides maybe one big right hand from Ankalaev at the start of round 5. So honestly, I think I could edge this fight to Pereira for 3-2 in his favor. But whatever the case is, I would never think that this was a robbery because the fight was that close, but it was definitely not as close watching it live to me. But watching that replay, you could get to see how good Pereira was doing. He wasn't doing as bad as what I originally thought. Also, Ankalaev did have the clearest rounds scored for him. Rounds 2 and 4 were clear, no dispute in my opinion. They were Ankalaev rounds, and in my opinion, even though I said that rewatching it, I thought that you could edge it to Pereira, you could really make an argument in rounds 1, 3, and 5 for either fighter. So Ankalaev was really the only fighter that won rounds very clear in my opinion. So we know Ankalaev has the ability to at least dominate rounds against someone like Alex Pereira, which is very important to note. And there's a few things I do want to go over and discuss in this breakdown, so get ready, guys, for quite the yap session here from me. Pereira didn't fire as many combinations in his first fight with Ankalaev, in my opinion, like he has in his other fights. I think I saw maybe one time he did that slip right hand then left hook combo that he does a ton in his other fights, and it was good, but he only did it maybe once in the third round against Ankalaev. But from then on, and even before that, it was like single shots and combos with maybe only 2 strikes in it. His high kicks were nice and his low kicks were doing decent, especially since Ankalaev is southpaw and Pereira doesn't have too much access to that like rear calf kick that he likes to throw. But Ank had a lot of success on the feet with Pereira because he was backing Pereira up the large majority of the time in the fight and mostly throwing 1-2 punch combinations and that was it. That's why Ank had so much success on the feet. If Pereira is going to pull off the win here, he needs to have great takedown defense like he had in his first fight with Ank, coupled with more volume and longer combinations in my opinion. And in the perfect world, for Pereira, he needs to throw immediately after Ankalaev reaches forward for the counter. So if Pereira throws first like a jab, for example, and then Ank throws like straight back with like a straight left, that's when it needs to be go time for Pereira to slip right hand, left hook, just because Ank is waiting for that first initial strike all the time, because the dude is a counter puncher above everything. So you need to throw the first punch out as bait almost to get the counter to show up and then punish him for being overly reactive to the first strike. That's in my head. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm not a pro fighter or anything, guys, but that to me would be the best chance for Pereira to beat Ankalaev here and potentially finish him by KO in this rematch as well. For Ankalaev, though, I think if he pressures heavy from the start and manages to grapple early instead of grapple later, he could potentially take the steam out of Alex Pereira's movements and strikes earlier than last time. So plenty of clinching and takedown attempts in the first 2 to 3 rounds, in my opinion, would be great for him. Ankalaev might be the best fighter in the division defensively, so I don't really have much to say about his defense or striking ability, nor do I think he should change anything this time around. I do think maybe he should be more wary of that countering of the counter that I was talking about earlier in this video for Alex Pereira's strategy, since I remember hearing his corner in that fight live saying that he should go right after Alex Pereira's throwing, so I hope he isn't as reactive and falls into some sort of counter of a counter here. But I think Ankalaev can win this fight pretty much with a similar game plan to the last fight, but just more wrestling early on. Now though, guys, when it comes to who I'm picking to win this fight, I think I'm going to slightly lean towards Magomed Ankalaev here, and there is a couple of reasons for that. I think Magomed showcased a lot of success on the feet in their first fight together. I think he showcased that he's the faster fighter too on the feet, in my opinion. I also think he showed that he's not going to completely buckle under that calf kick, which was a massive thing going into this fight initially after watching Magomed struggle with the calf kick against Jan Blachowicz. But I will say here though, that every single fight is different, and Magomed could end up struggling more this time around with the calf kick, but it could depend on where he gets hit on the calf, or like the area of the calf that gets hit. If it's constantly the same area, we won't know until fight night if that does happen. But in the same token, if we want to talk about Alex Pereira, it's not 100% that Alex Pereira will all of a sudden stuff every single takedown like he did in the first fight together now in this fight. I don't think it is very likely to happen this time around, or maybe like a better phrasing of it would be that things could go very differently this time around with the takedown attempts. I really do see Magomed Ankalaev being able to get Pereira down this time, and if he ever does at any point in this fight get him down to the ground, I think it's absolutely terrible for Alex Pereira here, to the point that I actually think that Magomed Ankalaev would finish him on the ground. But in the end, guys, this is still a close fight. I would like Pereira to win because I am a bigger fan of Pereira, but I think I will slightly lean towards Magomed Ankalaev to win this one, and I am actually going to go with him to win this by KO in the 3rd or 4th rounds after securing a takedown, or after getting Pereira to the ground, or after hurting him on the feet and then finishing him. I think Ankalaev is just a younger, more in their prime fighter right now. He's going to be the more explosive and speedy fighter in my opinion, and I do think because of his defense, he can stay safe from the biggest shot to Pereira here to come out on top yet again. That's my prediction for the main event, guys, and that wraps up my full card predictions and breakdown for the entire UFC 320 Ankalaev versus Pereira fight card. If you guys have any thoughts or any questions for me regarding the card, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I will do my best to respond to every single person that I see leave a comment. I always do, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.